All right, folks, so we're back. This time I'm with Bijou Abiola, and we're going to have a great discussion. Bijou, thank you for joining us here. A great discussion about two major topics during this very strange COVID pandemic period. Bijou, welcome. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sorry. Hi, Roger. Thanks for having me on. So I actually have a bit of an interesting background. I am a retailer by trade, and I've recently just taken on a role within technology to do data strategy for one of the leading department stores in North America. So that's kind of my role today, but I'm deeply steeped in retail and sort of all things retail related for the past 13 years.
Well, retail is a big part of the marketing component in my classes anyway. And I've even taught retail management and retail marketing, but wow, so many things are happening right now with retail. So many things were happening even before we came into this pandemic period. So why don't you give us a little sense of what's happening as an overall with the industry, the retail marketplace?
Yeah, it's been crazy, right? Like I think, March happened and the world has sort of stopped, for lack of a better word. But I think one of the interesting things about retail is that it had been in this place of limbo even before the virus hit, right? And so I've been seeing tons of articles, people talking about the death of the department store and how, all these companies are filing for bankruptcy. But really, if we look back, like, the consumer behavior has been changing for the past 5 years. And what do I mean by that? I mean that with the rise of e-commerce and with the rise of people's ability to shop via social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook, the need to go in the store has changed. And also sort of this need to shop in mass has also changed. And what I mean by that is people, especially people within the millennial demographic, are shopping not just for need, but they're also shopping for occasions, right? And by that I mean, they're shopping more with what their influencers are wearing. They're shopping more what they're seeing people that they like wear. And that leads to a lack of loyalty to a brand or to a specific store. And so we saw that happening before before COVID. And then COVID happened, and obviously a lot of stores shuttered. There wasn't much foot traffic once the store started to open. So we're seeing a lot of brands fold up, for lack of a better word. And it's sad, but really, I think this is just the reinvention of retail as we know it, in apparel at least.
I think consumers still want to buy, and I know that businesses still want to sell. So it's that shift that you're talking about, which did happen before. Are there any areas of the retail industry, if you will, any types of stores that you think will fare better under this whole new shift than, let's say, others? I'm going to point out, let's say, discount stores like TJ Maxx. You walk into the store, you look around, it's the catch of the day. It's sort of like a little treasure hunt, which is very different from, let's say, a major department store, which has, branded sections and sells things on a more regular basis than a TJ Maxx. You can go back and buy it later. It's still there. And then there's online. Some people kind of combine the online. I know a particular friend of mine that would go online, find the product he wanted, find the sale, go to the store, try it, and then go back and order it. How much of that has been pushed? Yeah, how much of that has been pushed or altered or shifting during this pandemic?
That's a really good question. I think back to the notion of consumer behavior, right? Because I'll even use myself for an example. I loved going in the store because I loved the experience of talking to associates, trying things on. And then the pandemic hit and I started shopping more online. And now I'm realizing it's actually not that hard to return stuff because a lot of places have drop-off centers. That being said, I would imagine that more people are going to shift their online to online shopping for two reasons, right? There's the safety aspect. They don't want to go in the stores. They don't feel as safe. And then they've actually realized, oh, this is quite convenient. Like, it's almost like getting a gift in the mail if you shop consistently like me, every 3 days, there's a gift in the mail for you. Yeah. Only this time you paid for the gift and you know exactly what's in the box. So in terms of off-price, though, I think there will definitely be a win for off-price. We saw this in 2007, 2008 with the recession when people just didn't have as much disposable income. And in order to find the designer brands, we're going to hunt places like TJ Maxx and Marshall. So I think we'll see that happening again. As far as the department store, I think really the biggest thing, even for the TJ Maxxes of the world, is innovation, right? Like, I think companies that are thinking that they're going to go back to doing business the way that they've done it in the past will not succeed. They might be fine now, but in the next 2 to 3 years, if they don't find a way to reach people like your friend who starts online, goes in the store, and then comes back online to place the order, how do we ensure that when he comes in the store to try it on, we can place that order for him online right away and he skips a step, right? Because what we don't want is for him to go home and find that same item on another person's site and order it on their site. So it's really that ease of transacting. And I think that's a lot of innovation that's going to have to come on the part of retailers. But I think it'll happen.
Now, I also have to point out, because artificial intelligence, AI marketing, all that's becoming a big thing, and has been, if you will, increased in terms of visibility during this period. But what do you think of how we now have so much information about the consumer online, doing digital marketing and digital selling or e-commerce, as opposed to the walk-ins? What kind of balance is there with that? What do you see? I'm just kind of curious about that aspect.
Yeah. I think as a retailer and as especially someone who's learning a lot about data now, it's a joy to have more people transacting online, right? Because there are way more data points that you can collect. So you mentioned AI. I have someone in our group that's working on that and is currently using AI to try and figure out predictive return analysis, right? So how likely is a customer to return this item based on how they're clicking around the website, which is so cool. She's genius, and I love that kind of work. But the reality is, if I can get more people shopping online, the more data I can collect. Because guess what? When you walk in the store and you're using your credit card, I don't have to ask you for your email address, which means I don't necessarily have a way to reach you once you walk out of my store. If you're in my store, I don't have to. There are just so many things that I can't collect from you in the store that I can collect online. So think of things like cookies that follow you around. I think they're becoming abusive, and they need to get rid of them. But it's just, in a digital world, it's so much easier to have more of your customers interacting with you on the web, whether it's through your online channel, your Instagram channel, your Facebook channel, whatever digital channel there is. The more people transact with you there, the more information you can collect about them.
Yeah, that's really a very positive outlook in terms of getting the information, and it was happening
Yeah.
before this event, which is really really a great thing for retailers. Now, let's just chat for a second about now, this moment.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, tourists are not coming into any major city. All of a sudden, everything locks down. Smaller retailers, let's talk about that for a second, begin to lose their leases, begin to give up because they're just not set up to convert to that famous
Mhm.
word pivot to online. What do you think? What do you think are some steps that maybe the smaller retailers can take to make that pivot, to be able to survive maybe another event like this or an extended COVID event? What do you think are some strategies, ideas, places to go with that?
Yeah, I know it's been really tough to see the numbers around small businesses folding, right? That, I think, is the human aspect of this and the reality behind it. But honestly, I think that, if I look at my group of friends, a lot of them are starting to shop on Etsy, right? So this idea of, we're not going to put money in the pockets of the big guys, like, let's go find smaller boutique brands. Like, I think smaller retailers should close up shop and start finding avenues to have their own sites, to sell on Instagram, to start selling on Etsy. I got these earrings on Etsy. I traditionally would have bought them maybe at Saks. I still love Saks, by the way. But I am shopping smaller, right? And then there's this whole big wave of Black-owned businesses. So people are finding ways to take whatever disposable income they have and use it for some sort of good. So I honestly think that there is opportunity here for the smaller guys. I would say they can sell on Amazon, but the reality is, a lot of people are starting to become anti-Amazon to some extent. So, and for whatever reason, right? They are not necessarily comfortable putting money in the pockets of, like, the bigger guys. So I think Etsy and other avenues for selling to through smaller channels, or for brands selling in more nuanced channels, is going to be the opportunity going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a very very astute a view of what's happening in terms of that. Now, that also raises the question about the retailer as the reseller, where now there's a new element to selling, and that is, the direct to the consumer. So even
Mm-hmm.
larger companies have an ability to sell directly to consumers without having to go through the reseller. How much do you think that will affect retailing, if you will, or the retail industry?
Yeah, no, that's a great one, especially if you think about like luxury brands that didn't necessarily sell their things online that are starting to, right? So I think that's something that department stores are going to have to think through, right? Which is why is this customer coming to my site versus going directly to that brand site? And the reality is kind of why the department store came to being to begin with, which is being able to buy multiple things from the same place and have one shipping total versus going to multiple places and then paying different shipping costs. I think the real game changer is going to be when everyone starts to offer free shipping. Then it's like, well, there's no benefit to me sort of buying it all in one place. I think also better reward programs. This sounds very like small, but when you have better reward programs, so spend more, get more in discounts, then people feel like they need to, like, think about the credit card industry. So you have that one credit card that gives you the best points that you can redeem on travel. Odds are you're going to keep using that a lot more than the other card. So I think it's just finding that value proposition on what they mean to the customer and why they should be coming to them versus going directly to the brand site. I know for me, I've been going direct to consumer, right? Instead of going to Sephora, maybe I'm going directly to the Drunk Elephant site. But I don't know how much of that is temporary and how much of that will stay the same. But I think they're definitely going to have to find some sort of value proposition for the why. And it could be as easy as free shipping, something that simple.
Yeah, that really does add a different spin to things. I'm trying to think in terms of, all of a sudden, again, that word pivot or that word shifting, all of a sudden, all these major companies, major retailers, some are small retailers, some are large, had to quickly shift gears. And there seems to be a lot of choices nowadays. I mean, you can create your own e-commerce, your Etsy, you can create, any number of ways to sell a product. But from a retailing standpoint, you have all these possible channels of communications to your consumers. So maybe if you have an older consumer, you might try Facebook. A younger, you might try an influencer through Instagram. What do you think are the popular routes for major retailers and smaller retailers to try? Because obviously you can't do everything at once. What would you suggest?
I honestly think you should try to do almost everything at once, right? So this whole idea of a test and learn, right? Like you might think your customers are on Facebook, but really they're shifting to Instagram, or you might think they're on Instagram, and really, I don't know if they even sell things via TikTok, but that's like the new hot thing, right?
Yeah.
The influencer marketing economy, I think, is getting smaller because people are starting to feel like those influencers are just as much as like advertising as any of a regular ad. I think in some categories like beauty, where you can get to see the before and after influencers still matter, or even like application influencers, like this is how you do it. Apparel is a little bit different. So I think honestly, just trying everything and not necessarily limiting yourself to where you think your customer is going to be important. And that is a risk, right? Especially when there's limited capital to go around and you're not sure sort of what the ROI is going to be. It's really, you have to test and learn, because one of the things that's going to kill anyone in business at this point is thinking they know the way their consumer behaves. Because
Yep.
I think we're experiencing the reality that consumer behavior is ever changing, and we have to kind of figure out where she is or where he is to meet them there.
Yeah, I do some business consulting, obviously, and one of the things that I would say to my clients or people who wanted to be my client is
Yeah.
use this time to learn as much about your customer, your consumer as possible. You don't have to stay silent until your door is open. How much research or how has research changed during this COVID period from your perspective on the retail industry?
Research is rapid now, right? Like you don't even have 3 months to try and figure it out. Like it's so rapid. And I think how it's changed is that companies that are able to not just receive the information, but dissect it and then come up with analysis to drive their business quicker will be the winners, right? So again, you're having more and more people interacting with you. You're having more and more engagement. You're collecting more information than you were, say, like 4 or 5 months ago. But taking that, having a good data, data warehouse system and data lake system, wherever it is that you're storing that data, to then analyze it, iterate it, and turn that into like actual insights that drive action is going to be key. So how quickly can you do that? And so research, I think when we think of research, we would think of like 6-month lead times, seasonal lead times, yearly lead times. And right now it's more like week to week lead times, like waiting for those seasonal opportunities, I think is going to be a missed chance for a lot of retailers. And it's like, how do I test and learn weekly, right? Yes, you have to plan out your digital marketing strategy, where your ad's going to go, what ads are you going to send. You still have to have a bit of planning, but I think explore, like I had a professor in business school that used the term explore and exploit, right? So how much of your budget are you allocating to exploiting your current business that you know about now and where the customer lives, and how much of it are you using to explore new opportunities? And I think businesses that aren't putting a little bit more in the explore bucket will struggle.
That's a fascinating truth, really. I mean,
Yeah.
and you have this world of feedback now that automatically is in place with a lot of your social media. So you can go on your own Facebook page and see what people are saying about any, aspect of your business. One last question about retail. If you could give any piece of advice today, right? We're just approaching August of 2020, crazy year, to the retailer. If you can give any piece of advice to the retailer right now that would be critical, what would it be?
Invest in technology. Step outside the box of what you've been doing. It's time to kind of let technology take over. We know that retail, especially apparel, is a very high touch business, meaning like it's all about people's tastes and all of that. But I would definitely say let technology do what technology can do, which is gather that information and spit it out to you quicker than having people go in and look. And I'm not saying that we don't need those people. We need those jobs. We need those people. But I think traditionally retailers have shied away from technology because, it is a consumer facing business. But so much advancement is happening on the tech side of things that we need to explore that more. I think the last piece of advice would be keep an eye on Google. They've just launched something called Shop Loop, or they're testing something called Shop Loop, where consumers can kind of, instead of starting their search on Google or on Instagram, going to YouTube to find out how to apply it, and then coming back to the retailer's website, Google has kind of given them the ability to do it all in that one space and then transact, right? So I think the touch points that we were used to getting from the consumer, sort of going from our Instagram to our YouTube to here and there, might then be consolidated into one place, making Google even more powerful in terms of just understanding consumer behavior. So what we would have been able to analyze, Google will now be doing the analysis for us. And so I think they need to pay more attention to Google than they're paying to Amazon today. My opinion, just my opinion.
That's a great piece of advice, and that's information that definitely is very, very useful.